Good evening and welcome to English 3 Period 8 for the week of April 20th. This is the start of our short story unit, and we're going to be examining The White Circle by John Bell Clayton. Last week I asked you guys to look at and work on critical reading skills. Now, what I mean by that is your ability to understand a text, pull out information, and then do things with that information. So we're going to be working on the first two bits for probably about a week, 2 weeks or on. So before we go any further, what I do want to do is I do want to go through just some basic vocabulary terms, and these are probably reviewed for a lot of us. So the characters for a lot of us. So just bear with me for a couple minutes while we work through this. So the first thing is characters. These are the people exist within the story. Now, you have main characters who the story is focused on, the ones driving the events, and you also have secondary characters. The ones who support the main characters. So that's kind of important for you guys to know the difference, okay? So when we take notes, I ask you guys to make sure you know who the people are involved, but you're going to want to be focusing on the main characters. How do you know? Often they're the ones the story's focused on. So setting, fairly straightforward. Where, when the story takes place. Okay. And sometimes this is specific. Sometimes we know exact dates, years, times, things like that, locations. Sometimes it's not. It's okay to be general for this. Plot. All right. These are the events of the story. Okay. What is happening? And to whom? Who is making? We can also think of it as beginning, middle, end, or my preference, exposition, rising action, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. Okay, let me make this look a bit tad different so it's easier to follow. So I'm going to actually add two other terms just to help understand this. We also have the protagonist. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because as we read and stuff, you're going to want to be able to differentiate these characters. So both the protagonist, the person who's working towards a goal or purpose in the story, and the antagonist, the person who's attempting to stop the protagonist, are main characters. Okay? So it's important we note the difference in that. And the reason why I had that set in here is because I don't want to say main character. I want to say protagonist. Conflict is the problem the protagonist is attempting to overcome. What stops them from reaching their goal. All right. So this is the basic vocab that you guys are going to need to know in order to talk stories. Now, the reason why I'm doing this before I begin reading is because I do want you guys to use this. So this is how it's going to look. I'm going to read the story. I'm going to pull it up on the screen. I'm going to share it with you guys. You can follow along as I read. And I will pause after each page. Now, my suggestion for you guys is at that point, I'm only going to pause for a little bit. At that point, you guys pause the video, write down your notes. Remember, I'm asking you guys to do 3 things, okay? I'm going to make it green. I'm asking you to identify what does the text say, Say it. Why does it matter? To me or to the characters? Okay. Why does text matter? All right. So these are the three things you're actually looking for. Make sure, point it out here, right here. All right. So I'm going to start reading shortly. This is what we're looking for. We're looking for, let's see if I can actually draw anything. 3, what does the text say? 2, how does it say it? And 1, why does it matter per page? So we're going to take a look at our story. This is The White Circle by John Bell Clayton. Now, one last thing before I begin. When I look for stories, when I look for any texts that I give you guys, I have a lot of things that I try to consider. But part of what I have to do is look at what skills I want you guys to practice and what's going to help me accomplish that. So, where can I put that? That will probably have to be moved as I read. So, if I were to try to select stories that I believed interest everybody or were ones that I thought you would enjoy, I'd have a hard time finding a story that I can get everyone to read. Sometimes we have to read things, do things that we find boring. Sometimes we have to read things, do things that we don't like. That's part of life. Okay? But I am here to help. And part of this is reading slowly, taking notes. So I will read out loud. Okay? But I'm asking you guys to meet me halfway. I can assist if you have questions, not just I don't get this. What don't you get about it? Did you take notes as you read? Did you identify the characters, the setting, the plot, what's going on? Or did you just stop reading partway through because you're like, I don't know what's going on. I don't like this. I can't help if I don't know specifics, and I can't help if you don't meet me halfway. I'm here for you guys. I want to help you out. We are in a unique situation with this online schooling, so bear with me. I'm trying my best. This would be different if we were in school, but I still need to see specific skills. So this is how we're going to do it. I will try to find different stories that you guys might be interested in, but the stories I pick, I do think you're interested in if you give them a chance. So for the moment, we're going to be reading The White Circle. Bear with me, follow along. Okay. Get my mouse out of there. All right. So, The White Circle by John Bell Clayton. As soon as I saw Anvil squatting up in the tree, like some hateful creature that belonged in trees, I knew I had to take a beating, and I knew the kind of beating it would be. But still, I had to let it be that way, because this went beyond any matter of curse or shame. That tree was mine. I wanted no doubt about that. It was a seedling that grew out of the slady bank beside the dry creek mark across the road from the house, and 13 small apples it had borne that year were the 13 most beautiful things on this beautiful earth. The day I was 12, Father took me up to the barn to look at the colts, Saturn, Jupiter, Devil, and Moonkiss, the Whiteface. Father took out a cigar out of his vest pocket, put one foot on the bottom plank of the fence, and leaned both elbows on top of the fence, and his face looked quiet and pleased and proud, and I liked the way he looked because it was as if he had a little joke or surprise that would turn out nice for me. Tucker, Father said presently, I am not unaware of the momentous of this day. Now, there are 4 of the finest colts in August County. If there are 4 any finer anywhere in Virginia, I don't know where you'd find them unless Arthur Hancock over in Marlboro,
Albemarle would have them. Father took one elbow off the fence and looked at me. Now, do you suppose, he asked in the fine, free good humor, that if I were to offer you a little token to commemorate this occasion, you could make a choice? Yes, sir, I said. Which one? Father asked. Devil? He's wild. No, sir, I said. I'd like to have the apple tree below the gate. Father looked at me for at least a minute. You would have to understand his pride in his Colts to understand the way he looked. But at 12, how could I express how I felt? My setting such store in having the tree as my own had something to do with the coloring of the apples as they hung among the green leaves. It also had something to do with their ripening, not in the autumn when the world was full of apples, but in midsummer when you wanted them. But it had more to do with the way of life that had come down through the generations. I would have given one of the apples to Janie. I would have made it a ceremony. Well, I would not have said the words because at 12 you have no such words. I would have handed over the apple with something like this in mind. Janie, I want to give you this apple. It came from my tree. The tree stands on my father's land. Before my father had the land, it belonged to his father, and before that, it belonged to my great grandfather. It's the English family land. It's almost sacred. My possession of this tree forges of me a link in this owning ancestry that must go back clear beyond Moses and all the old Bible folks. Father looked at me for that slow, peculiar minute in our lives. All right, son, he said. The tree is yours in fee simple to bargain, sell, or convey, or to keep and nurture and eventually hand down to your heirs or assign forever unto eternity. You have a touch of the poetry. You have a touch of poetry in your soul, and that fierce, proud love of the land in your heart. When you grow up, I hope you don't drink too much. I don't know what he meant by that, but the tree was mine, and now there perched Anvil, callously munching on one of my 13 apples, stowing the rest inside his ragged shirt until it bulged out in ugly lumps. I knew the apples pressed cold against his hateful belly, and to me the coldness was sickening evil. I picked a rock out of the dust of the road and tore across the creek bed and said, All right, Anvil, climb down. Anvil's milky eyes batted at me under the strangely fair eyebrows. There was not much expression on his face. Yeah, he said, you stuck up little priss. You hit me with that rock. You just do. Anvil, I said again, climb down. They're my apples. Anvil quit munching for a minute and grinned at me. You want an apple? I'll give you one. Yeah. He suddenly cocked his right arm back and cracked me in the temple with the half-eaten apple. All right, take a pause here. Identify, what does the text say? So, who is in this text? Who are the two main characters? Who do you think the protagonist is? Who do you think the antagonist is? Where is it taking place? Okay, where is all this currently centered around? Okay, and then what's going on? What's happening? All right, focus on those things. Who's the protagonist? The one who wants something, the one who has a purpose, who's trying to get something. Who's the antagonist? The one who's trying to stop him. Where is it taking place? When? How old are these people? And what's going on? So pause if you need to. Going on to page 2. I let go of the rock and hit a limb with a dull chub sound, and Anvil said, You're fixing to get it. You're really fixing to get it. I'll shake you down, I said. I'll shake you clear down. Clear down, Anvil chortled. Where do you think I'm up at? Up on top of Walker Mountain? It wouldn't hurt none if I were to fall out of this runty bush in my head. I grabbed one of his bare feet and pulled backwards, and Anvil came amidst a flutter of broken twigs and leaves. We both hit the ground. I hopped up, and Anvil arose with a faintly vexed expression. He hooked a leg in the back of my knees and shoved a paw against my chin. I went down in the slate. He got down and pinioned my arms with his knees, pinned down. I tried to kick him in the back of the head, but couldn't, only flail my feet helplessly in the air. You might as well quit kicking, he said. He took one of my apples from his shirt and began eating it, almost absent-mindedly. You dirty, filthy, stinking sow, I said. He snarled. snorted. I couldn't be a sow, but you take that back. I wish you were frying the middle of hell right this minute. Take back the stinking pot, Anvil said thoughtfully. I don't stink. He pressed his knees down harder, pinching, squeezing the flesh of my arms. I sobbed. I take back the stinky part. That's better, Anvil said. He ran a finger into his jaw to dislodge a fragment of apple from his teeth. For a moment, he examined the fragment and then wiped it on my cheek. I'm going to tell Father, I said desperately. Father, Anvil said with falsetto mimicry. Father, say, old man. You think your old man is some stuff on stick, don't you? You think he won't walk on, he don't, you think he don't walk on the ground, don't you? You think you and your whole stuck-up family don't walk on the ground. Say, old man, go to hell. Shut up, your blubbering. Say, old man. Old man, I wish you were dead. Yeah, Anvil said. Stop blubbering. Now call me Uncle Anvil. Say, Uncle Sweetie Petey Tweety, beg your pardon, Uncle Anvil. Say it. Uncle Sweetie, Uncle Petey Tweety, son of a bitch, Anvil. He caught my hair in his hands and wallowed my head against the ground until I said every bitter word of it 3 times. Anvil tossed away a spent, maltreated core that had been my apple. He gave my head one final thump upon the ground and said, Yah, again in a satisfied way. He released me and got up. I lay there with my face muscles twitching in outrage. Anvil looked down at me. Stop blubbering, he commanded. I'm not crying, I said. I was lying there with a towering homicidal detestation, planning to kill Anvil, and the thought of it had a sweetness like summer fruit. There were times when I had no desire to kill Anvil. I remember the day his father showed up at school. He was dirty, half crazy, an itinerant knick-knack peddler. He had a club and told the principal he's going to beat the meanness out of Anvil or beat him to death. Anvil scudded under the desk and lay there trembling, wimping until the principal finally drove the ragged old man away. I had no hatred for Anvil then. But another day, just for the sheer filthy meanness of it, he crawled through the classroom window after schools and befouled the floor. And the number of times he pushed over smaller boys just to see them hit the packed hard earth of the schoolyard, to watch the fright on their faces as they ran away, was more than I could count. Still another day, he walked up to me as I leaned against the warmth of the school hack shed in the sunlight, feeling the nice warmth of the weather-beaten boards. They hate me, he said dismally. They hate me because my old man's crazy. As I looked at Anvil, I felt that in the background I was seeing that bitter, demented, bitter father trudging his lonely, vicious way through the world. They don't hate you, I lied. Anyway, I don't hate you. That was true. At that moment, I didn't hate him. How about coming home and staying all night with me? After school, Anvil went along with me and threw rocks at me all the way home. Gonna pause here. Okay. Again, 3 things. What does the text say? Okay. So who's here? What's going on? What are they talking about? All right. What do we learn about Anvil and Tucker? Tucker's the I, by the way. Make sure you get that. How does it say it? How do we know what's going on here? How do we know about the relationship? What exposes that for us? What shows us it? And finally, why does it matter? Make a connection to yourself. Okay, I'm just gonna move this out of the way. So I'm starting it now, and then I'm gonna go down here. Now, I had no soft feeling of any kind. I planned, practically, his extinction as he stood there before me, commanding me to cease the blubbering out of my heart. Shut up now, Anvil said. I never hurt you. Stop blubbering. I'm not crying, I said. You're still mad, though. He looked at me appraisingly. No, I'm not, I lied. I'm not even mad. I was mad, a little bit mad, but not now. Well, what you looking so funny around the mouth and eyes for? I don't know. Let's go to the barn and play. Play what? Anvil looked at me truncatingly. He didn't know whether to be suspicious or flattered. I'm getting too big to play much anyways. He added undecidedly. I might play a little bit if this ain't some sissy game. We'll play anything, I said eagerly. All right, racing to the barn. You start. I started running towards the wire fence, and at the third step, he stuck his foot between my legs, and I fell forward on my face. Yeah, he croaked. That'll learn you. Learn me what? I asked as I got up. Learn me what? It seemed important to know that. Maybe it would make some difference in what I planned to do to Anvil. It seemed very important to know what it was that Anvil wanted to do and never could teach me in the world. They'll just learn you, he said doggedly. Go ahead, I won't trip you any more. So we climbed the wire fence and raced across the burned field the hogs ranged in. We squeezed through the heavy sliding doors to the barn floor. The first thing that caught Anvil's eye was the irregular circle that Father had painted there. He wanted to know what it was, and I said, nothing, because I wasn't quite ready. And Anvil forgot about it for the moment and wanted to play jumping from the barn floor out to the top of the fresh rick of golden straw. I said, no, who wants to do that anyways? I do, said Anvil. Jump, you puke. Go ahead and jump. I didn't want to jump. The barn had been built on a hill. The front ground came up level with the barn floor, but in the back the floor was even with the top of the straw rick, which with four wide, terrible, yawning feet between it. I said, nah, there's nothing to jump in. There ain't, huh? Said Anvil. Well, try it. He gave me a shove, and I went out into terrifying space. He leaped after and upon me, and we hit the pillowy side of the straw rick and tumbled to the ground in a smothering slide. That's no fun, I said, getting up from the bush, brushing the chaff from my face and hair. Anvil himself had lost interest in it by now and was idly munching another one of my apples. I know something, I said. I know a good game. Come on, I'll show you. Anvil stung me in the leg with the apples as I raced through the door of the cutting room. When he reached the barn floor, his eyes again fell on the peculiar white circle. That's to play prisoner's base with, I said. That's the base. That's a funny looking base, he said suspiciously. I never saw any base that looked like that. I could feel my muscles tensing, but I wasn't particularly excited. I didn't trust myself to look up towards the roof where the big mechanical hay fork hung suspended from the long metal track that ran back over the streaming mows of alfalfa and red clover. The fork had vicious, sharp prongs that had never descended to the floor except on one occasion Anvil knew nothing about. I think Father had been drinking the day he brought the hay fork in Stanton. It was an unwieldy, involved contraption of ropes, triggers, and pulleys, which took 4 men to operate. A man came out to install the fork, and for several days he climbed up and down ladders, bolting the track in place and arranging the various gadgets. Finally, when he said it was ready, Father had a load of hay pulled into the barn, and the men called the men into the fields to watch and assist in the demonstration. I don't remember the details. I just remember that something went very badly wrong. The fork suddenly plunged down with a peculiar ripping noise and embedded itself in the back of one of the workhorses. Father said very little. He simply painted the big white circle on the barn floor and had the fork hauled back up to the top and fastened with a trigger around the rung and stationary lacquer 8 feet off the floor, so no one could inadvertently pull it. Then he said quietly, I don't want anyone ever to touch this trip road or to have occasion to step inside this circle. So that was why I didn't now look up to the fork. I don't want to play no sissy's prisoner's base, and said, pause here. Again, 3 things of what does the text say, 2 of how do we know it, 1, why does it matter to me? So, what does the text say? What's happening here? What's going on? What's this relationship between Anvil and Tucker? How's this looking? What did we just find out? How do we know? How do we know these things? What showed us it? Why does it matter? Go ahead, take your notes. Last page. Let's find a nest of young pigeons. All right, I lied. I know where there's a nest, but 1 game of prisoner's base first. You don't know where there's any pigeon nest, Anvil said. You will have the nerve to throw them up against the barn if you did. Yes, I would, too, I protested. Now, let's play one game of prisoner's base. Get in the circle and shut your eyes and start counting. All right, Anvil agreed warily. Let's get it over with and find the pigeons. 10, 10, double 10, 45. Right in the middle of the circle, I told him, and count slow. How am I going to hide if you count that way? Anvil counted more slowly. 5, 10, 15. I gave Anvil one last vindictive look and sprang up to the stationary ladder and swung out on the trip rope of the unpredictable hay fork with all my puny might. The fork's whizzing descent was accompanied by that peculiar ripping noise. Anvil must have jumped instinctively. The fork missed him by several feet. For a moment, Anvil stood absolutely still. He turned around and saw the fork still shimmering from its impact with the floor. His face became exactly the pale green of the carbide we burned in our acetylene lighting plant at the house. Then he looked at me, at the expression on my face, and his Adam's apple bobbed queerly up and down, and a little stream of water trickled down his right trouser leg and over his bare foot. You tried to kill me, he said thickly. He did not come toward me. Instead, he sat down. He shook his head sickly. After a few sullen, bewildered moments, he reached into his shirt and began hauling out the apples one by one. You can have your stinking old apples, he said. You do that for a few dried up little apples? Your old man owns everything inside. I ain't got none. Go ahead and keep your stinking old apples. He got to his feet and slowly walked out the door. Since swinging off the trip rope, I had neither moved nor spoken. For a moment more, I stood motionless and voiceless, and then I ran over and grabbed up the 9 apples that were left and called, Anvil, Anvil. He continued across the field without even pausing. I yelled, Anvil, wait, I'll give them to you. Anvil climbed the fence without looking back and set down the road towards the store. Every few steps he kicked his wet trouser leg. 3 sparrows flew out the door in a dusty, chattering spiral, and then there was only the image of the hayfork shimmering and terrible in the great and growing, accusing silence and emptiness of the barn. All right, let me go to, actually, I'm on the right page. Back. All right, your assignment. Again, I was asking you guys to take some notes, okay? And then I do want you guys to answer these 5 questions. Do the opening lines of the story draw you in and make you curious to read? Why or why not? Okay? Think about your notes here. At what point is the tone of the story clearly established? When do you begin to get a pretty good idea of the direction the story is going? Look back to your notes. When do you get an idea about the relationship? How does the author make his characters 3-dimensional? Are there some characters more believable than others in the story? Why or why not? That's why you got these notes. What are your feelings about the conclusion of the story? Does it feel confusing, like things have been resolved, or just open-ended? Why do you think the author chose to end the story this way? Hey, why does it matter? Okay. Think about the ending of the story and what themes can you identify. So if we go back to this, all right, we can actually add in another vocab word here. Theme. The central message or idea the story wants the reader to walk away with. Okay, so there's a story I want to tell you. What do you want to walk away with this? All right. So here's the thing. I got this for you guys. Okay. I am actually going to save this and then I'll upload it as well. So it gives you some additional notes. But please use this video to help answer the questions. Hopefully, if you guys have any more, please contact me. I do try to respond between 9 and 8, or 9 and 1 o'clock. If you get me after that time, it's hit or miss. Tomorrow, 9:30 to 10:10, I am online. So please come and talk to me. Thank you guys so much and have a good night.